I can't hold it in any more, she gasped, her voice trembling in the cold wind that swept across the empty fields. The rancher froze mid-step, the lantern shaking in his hand. He had been walking toward the barn when he heard it, that voice, soft but desperate, coming from the direction of the old wooden shed. For a moment, he thought it might have been his imagination. The night was still, the stars scattered like silent witnesses above. But then it came again, weaker this time, almost a whisper. Please, help me. His heart began to pound. He hadn't let anyone onto his property in months. No one ever came this far out into the Montana plains. And yet, someone was here, hiding, hurting. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to Gentle Heart, and leave a like and comment if this story touches your heart. The rancher took a cautious step toward the shed, his boots crunching on the frozen dirt. He could feel the weight of the night pressing down on him, the kind that carried old memories, the kind he'd tried to bury for years. When he finally pushed open the shed door, his lantern light revealed a young woman curled up in the corner, shivering under a torn blanket. Her hair was damp, her clothes soaked, and her eyes were wide with fear. She looked barely 20. Please don't hurt me, she whispered, clutching her stomach as if in pain. The rancher stared, speechless. He'd seen many things in his life, storms, loss, loneliness, but nothing like this. I'm not gonna hurt you, he said quietly, setting the lantern down. Who are you? What are you doing out here? She didn't answer right away. Instead, tears welled up in her eyes. I was running, she said softly. From someone who said he loved me, but her voice broke. He hurt me. The rancher's chest tightened. He noticed bruises on her arms, the kind you don't get from falling. The kind that come from cruelty. He wanted to walk away. He'd told himself years ago never to get involved again, not after what happened to his daughter. She'd run away at 17, and he'd never seen her again. The guilt of that failure still haunted him every night. But something about this girl, the way she looked at him, terrified yet hopeful, tore through the walls he'd built. You need to come inside, he said finally, his voice rough. You'll freeze out here. She hesitated, but the warmth in his tone was enough. He wrapped his old coat around her shoulders and helped her to the house. She stumbled a little, her legs weak, but she managed to walk beside him. When they reached the porch, she stopped and looked up at the stars. You live alone? She asked quietly. He nodded. Just me and the horses. Inside, the smell of wood and coffee filled the air. The rancher lit the stove, poured her a mug of hot water, and handed it to her. She held it with trembling hands, staring at the steam as if trying to remember what comfort felt like. What's your name? He asked. Lena, she whispered. Thank you, for not turning me away. He nodded again, unsure what to say. He wasn't used to company, or gratitude. That night, while she rested on the couch, he sat by the fire, staring into the flames. He couldn't help but think of his daughter, Emma, the same dark hair, the same fragile look. If someone had found Emma when she needed help, maybe things would have been different. Maybe she'd still be alive. The thought hit him like a punch to the gut. He looked over at Lena, sleeping peacefully for the first time in who knows how long, and made a silent promise he wouldn't fail this time. Over the next few days, Lena began to recover. She helped around the house, feeding the horses, sweeping the porch, trying to repay his kindness. The rancher, whose name was Frank, began to notice small changes in himself too. He laughed a little more. He talked a little more. The silence that had once filled his home now felt alive again. Sometimes, he'd catch Lena looking out the window with a faraway expression. You thinking about going back? He asked one morning. She shook her head. There's nothing left for me there. I just want to start over, somewhere safe. Frank nodded, feeling something stir inside him, a quiet protectiveness he hadn't felt in years. You can stay here as long as you need, he said. Lena smiled softly, her eyes glistening. You remind me of my dad, she said. He passed away when I was 15. You even talk like him. Frank turned away, pretending to busy himself with the stove. He didn't want her to see the tears forming in his eyes. But peace never stays long. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, a black truck rolled up the dirt road. Frank's gut tightened. A man stepped out, tall, angry, his fists clenched. You seen a girl? He demanded. Name's Lena. She ran off with some of my things. Frank's hand tightened around the doorframe. He glanced toward the kitchen where Lena stood frozen, eyes wide with terror. Ain't no one here but me, Frank said calmly. You must have taken a wrong turn. The man sneered. Don't lie to me, old man. She's here. He took a step forward, but Frank's voice turned to steel. You best get off my land before I make you regret it. For a tense moment, the air felt heavy with danger. Then, seeing the determination in Frank's eyes, the man spat on the ground and stormed back to his truck. The sound of the engine faded down the road, leaving only silence behind. Lena sank to the floor, shaking. You could have gotten hurt, she cried. Frank knelt beside her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. You're safe now, he said quietly. No one's gonna hurt you again. She burst into tears, clinging to him. It was the first time in years he'd held someone with that much pain and trust mixed together. And in that moment, something inside him broke, and healed at the same time. Days turned into weeks, and winter began to fade. The snow melted, and life slowly returned to the ranch. Lena started painting the old barn, her laughter echoing across the fields. Frank began to write again. Letters to Emma, the daughter he'd lost, telling her about Lena, about how helping someone else had brought him a kind of peace he thought he'd never feel again. One morning, Lena found one of those letters left on the table. She read it quietly, tears streaming down her cheeks. When Frank walked in, she stood and hugged him tightly. You gave me back my faith in people, she whispered. I thought kindness was gone from this world. But you proved me wrong. He smiled faintly, his weathered face softening. You gave me back something too, he said. A reason to care again. When spring came, Lena left for the nearby town to start a new job at a small art studio. Before she left, she hugged Frank one last time. I'll come back, she promised. Your family now, he nodded, watching her drive away down the dirt road, the rising sun painting the sky gold. As the light filled the ranch, Frank looked up and whispered, Thank you, Emma. Maybe this was your way of sending me someone to save, the way I couldn't save you. And from that day on, whenever the wind passed through the open fields, it seemed to carry two voices, one of a lost daughter, and one of a young woman reborn through kindness. Both forever part of the gentle heart that refused to stop believing in love. Weeks passed, and the ranch seemed quieter without Lena's laughter echoing through its open spaces. Yet, something in Frank's heart had changed for good. For years, he had lived like a ghost, working the land, feeding the horses, fixing the fences, but never really living. Now, each sunrise felt different. The silence wasn't heavy anymore, it was peaceful. Every morning, he'd find himself looking down the dirt road, half expecting to see that little blue pickup of hers coming back around the bend. One chilly morning, Frank received a letter in the mail. The handwriting was neat but familiar. His heart skipped as he tore it open. Inside was a note from Lena. Dear Frank, I wanted to tell you that the art studio has been going well. They've given me a small exhibition of my own, paintings of the ranch, the horses, and the sunsets you showed me. People say there's something peaceful about them, something that feels like home. I think it's because when I paint, I see your kindness in every color. You taught me that not all storms destroy, some wash us clean. Thank you for saving me when I couldn't save myself. With love, Lena. Frank folded the letter carefully and placed it beside Emma's photo on the mantel. You see that, kid? He whispered softly. Looks like we did something right. Later that afternoon, as he rode out to the north pasture, he saw something strange by the gate, a little bundle wrapped in brown paper tied with string. He dismounted and picked it up. Inside was a painting, Lena's work, showing the ranch bathed in morning light, with two figures standing in the field, a young woman and an older man, both smiling. At the bottom, she'd written, For the man who gave me back my life. Frank's eyes stung as he held the canvas to his chest. The days grew longer and warmer, and though Lena had moved on, her presence lingered in every corner of the ranch. Frank began inviting local kids from town to visit on weekends, teaching them how to ride horses, mend fences, and care for the land. He told them stories, not about loss, but about hope. Kindness, he'd say, isn't a big thing you do once. It's the small things you do every day, even when no one's watching. One afternoon, as he taught a little boy how to saddle a horse, a familiar voice called out from behind him. Still giving free lessons, huh? He turned and saw her, Lena, standing by the fence, smiling. Her hair was longer now, her eyes brighter. She looked stronger, happier. Thought I'd come visit before you forget what I look like, she teased. Frank laughed, his throat tightening with emotion. Forget you? Not a chance. They spent the evening sitting on the porch, watching the sun melt into gold and crimson across the sky. Lena told him about her art shows, how people connected deeply with her paintings of quiet places and second chances. It's strange, she said softly. People think the art is about beauty, but really, it's about survival. About finding light in the dark. Frank nodded. That's what life's about too. There was a long pause before Lena added, you know, I used to think love was supposed to be loud, flowers, promises, fireworks. But it's not. It's this quiet care. Someone seeing you when you feel invisible. Frank looked at her, his weathered eyes glistening. That's exactly what I thought after I lost Emma. I kept asking myself why I didn't do more. But maybe, helping you, maybe that was my second chance at doing something right. Lena reached over and squeezed his hand. You did more than something right, she said. You changed the ending of my story. As twilight fell, fireflies began to flicker across the grass. The air smelled of wild sage and earth. Frank leaned back in his chair, feeling a peace he hadn't known in decades. You ever wonder, he asked quietly, why some people cross paths just once and still leave a mark that lasts forever? Lena smiled. Maybe because they were sent to remind us what we've forgotten, that kindness still matters, even when the world feels cold. That night, after Lena left for her motel in town, Frank sat by the fire again, staring at the flames. He reached for his old leather journal, the one he hadn't opened in years, and began to write. There's a girl named Lena who walked into my life one winter's night when I thought I had nothing left to give. She reminded me that even broken hearts can be mended through compassion. I used to believe redemption was something you earned, but now I think it's something you give. Because every act of kindness, no matter how small, ripples further than we can ever see. When he finished, he placed the journal back on the shelf beside the photo and whispered, "Thank you for sending her, Emma." The following spring, a gallery in the nearby town held an exhibition called The Gentle Heart. It was a collection of Lena's paintings, inspired by the people who'd shown her compassion when she needed it most. The final painting stood in the center, a portrait of Frank sitting on the porch, the sunset glowing behind him. Visitors who saw it said it felt alive, as if the man in the painting was still watching over the world with quiet strength. Frank didn't know much about fame or art, but when Lena later showed him the picture in the local newspaper, his face beneath the words, "A heart that healed others," he just smiled and said, "Guess we both found our way home, didn't we?" And as the years passed, the ranch became more than a place, it became a haven. Travelers, runaways, broken souls found their way there, drawn by whispers of a man with a kind heart who never turned anyone away. Frank welcomed them all, each one a new reminder that kindness, once shared, never dies. It only grows, from one heart to another, like wildflowers after rain. So if you ever find yourself standing at the edge of giving up, remember this: sometimes, the smallest act of compassion can change a life. Sometimes, it can even save two. Because in the quiet heart of a lonely rancher and the trembling hands of a lost girl, love didn't arrive with thunder, it came softly, like a whisper in the dark, and stayed forever.